November 13th, 2025. TBI agents and detectives drove to the 3500 block of Van Hill Road in Greenville, Tennessee. They confirmed they were there. Someone asked, and they confirmed it. That's all they said. They didn't say what they were looking for. They didn't say what they found. They didn't say whether it was connected to a specific tip, or a new piece of evidence, or a thread they had been pulling for months. They said, "We were there." And then they said nothing else. I keep thinking about that, about what it means when a law enforcement agency that has been working a case for more than 4 years shows up at a specific address, 9.8 miles from where Summer Wells lived, and then releases no information about why or what happened when they got there. It means one of two things. Either they went there and found nothing useful and there's nothing to report, or they went there and found something and they're not ready to talk about it yet. Both of those possibilities are interesting, but only one of them keeps me up at night. Let me back up. If you've been following this case, you know the basic facts. Summer Moon Utah Wells disappeared on June 15, 2021, from her home at 110 Ben Hill Road in the Beach Creek community of Hawkins County, Tennessee. She was 5 years old. She was reported missing by her family at approximately 6:30 in the evening. An Amber Alert was issued that night and remains active today. She would be 10 years old now. The TBI released an age-progressed image in August 2025 showing what she might look like. The reward stands at over $73,000, contributed by the Church Hill Rescue Squad and community donors who haven't stopped caring about this case. No arrests, no charges, 5 years and no public resolution of any kind. What I want to talk about today is not the case from the beginning. You know the beginning. We've covered it before on this channel. What I want to talk about is where the investigation is right now, in the specific, documented sense of where investigators have physically been and what they have and haven't said about it. Because the November 2025 field visit to Van Hill Road is something that I haven't seen get the sustained attention it deserves. It was reported. WJHL covered it. The TBI confirmed it. And then it mostly disappeared into the ongoing noise of a case that has generated a lot of noise over 5 years. But let me tell you what that field visit actually represents. Van Hill Road is in Greeneville, Tennessee. Greenville is in Greene County, which is adjacent to Hawkins County, where the Wells family lived. The specific address, the 3500 block of Van Hill Road, is approximately 9.8 miles from Summer's family home on Ben Hill Road. Not a long distance. Not another state, not another region, not some far-flung location that would suggest investigators had gone in a completely new direction. About 10 miles. 10 miles. On November 13th, 2025, 4 years, 4 months, and 28 days after Summer disappeared, trained TBI agents and detectives drove to that address. They were there. What were they following? What had been developed over those 4 years that brought them to a specific block on Van Hill Road in Greenville on a November afternoon in 2025? What tip had come in, or what piece of evidence had matured, or what thread had someone been pulling since 2021 that led to that block on that day? We don't know. The TBI confirmed the field visit and said nothing else. And here's the thing about that silence that I want to sit with for a minute. Because I think there's a tendency, especially in a case that has been covered this intensively for this long, to interpret official silence as a sign that nothing is happening. To read the absence of press releases and arrests and dramatic announcements as evidence that the investigation has run out of road. That's not how investigations work. And specifically, that's not how the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has described their approach to this case in every public statement they've made over 5 years. At the 1-year mark, TBI Special Agent Shannon Dotson said the case remained active and investigators were continuing to follow up on leads. At the 3-year mark, TBI Criminal Investigation Division Assistant Director Josh Melton sat down for an extended public interview. He said, "All stones are being turned over." He said the case was outside the norm. that there were few clues despite investigators doing everything within their power. He said that misleading information circulating on social media had created real problems for the investigation. He said he was confident the case would eventually be resolved. And then in November 2025, 2 years after that 3-year briefing, agents drove to a specific address in Greenville and confirmed they were there. All stones are being turned over. That's not the language of an investigation that has stopped. That's the language of an investigation that is slow and careful and methodical and has not given up on finding the specific piece of information that changes everything. That's the language of people who are still literally getting in their cars and driving to addresses. On June 15, 2026, the 5-year anniversary, TBI director David Rausch released a video. He said the agency never imagined Summer would still be missing 5 years in. He said the smallest detail, the smallest thing anyone remembered from that day, could be helpful. He said, "Please come forward if you know anything. Please call the tip line, the smallest detail." A TBI director recording a video on the 5th anniversary of a disappearance and saying, "Please, the smallest detail." That's not the language of someone who has a case wrapped up. But it's also not the language of someone who has walked away. It's the language of someone who is working with what they have and who believes, has to believe in order to keep doing the job, that the thing they're missing is still out there to be found, now. Let me talk about what's specifically interesting about Van Hill Road and Greenville. I want to be honest about what we know and what we don't. We know agents were there on November 13th, 2025. We know approximately where they were, the 3500 block. We know they confirmed the visit when asked. That's it. That's the full public record of that field operation. What we don't know, what tip generated that visit. Whether it was connected to a specific person, a specific location on that block, or something broader in the area. Whether they found what they were looking for. Whether that visit led to additional investigative steps that haven't been disclosed. Whether it connected to any of the other lines of investigation that have been discussed publicly over the years, the vehicle leads that Josh Melton mentioned at the 3-year mark, the ongoing tip processing, the interviews, I don't know. And I want to be careful not to fill in the things I don't know with things I've made up. But here's what I can tell you, and what I think is worth thinking about carefully. The TBI has been described, by its own officials, as pursuing a multi-pronged investigation with vehicle leads, witness interviews, physical evidence processing, and tip evaluation as parallel tracks. Josh Melton, at the 3-year mark, was specific about the vehicle focus. He said investigators had been conducting interviews with people about vehicles that may have traveled through the area. He said this was an ongoing active line of inquiry. That was in 2024. And then in November 2025, agents drove to a specific address in Greenville. Is there a connection? Could the vehicle leads have produced something that pointed toward Greenville? Could an interview with someone, conducted sometime in those 4+ years, have generated information that led to that specific block? I genuinely don't know. I'm thinking out loud here, the way you do when you've been following something for a long time and you're trying to make sense of the pieces that are publicly visible. This is not a conclusion. This is not a theory I'm presenting as fact. It's the kind of question that the public record raises but can't answer. What I feel confident saying is this: a field visit to a specific address, 9.8 miles from the scene, more than 4 years into an investigation, is not routine maintenance. Investigators don't just randomly drive to addresses on the off chance they'll find something. They go because something, a tip, an interview, a piece of evidence, something pointed them there. Something pointed them to Van Hill Road, and they haven't told us what they found. Let me talk about the age-progressed photo, because I think it's a piece of the current state of the investigation that deserves more attention than it's gotten. In August 2025, the TBI released an age-progressed image of Summer Wells. This is a forensic technique that uses computer modeling to show what a person who went missing at a young age might look like as they've grown. The TBI worked with a forensic artist to produce an image showing what Summer might look like at 9 or 10 years old. Think about why they do that. Law enforcement agencies don't release age-progressed photos as a memorial gesture. They release them because they believe the person is potentially still alive and potentially still out there to be found. They release them because showing the public what someone might look like now, rather than what they looked like when they disappeared, increases the chance that someone who has seen that person will recognize them. The TBI released an age-progressed photo of Summer Wells in August 2025. 3 months later, they drove to a specific address in Greenville. I'm not saying those two things are connected. I genuinely don't know if they are. But I am saying that both of those actions, releasing a photo intended to help identify someone who might be alive, and conducting a field visit to a specific location, are the actions of an investigation that has not concluded that the worst possible outcome has already occurred. That matters. It matters because this case has been surrounded by so much speculation and noise and online community discussion that it can be easy to lose track of what the official investigation actually believes and is actually doing. And what the official investigation is actually doing in November 2025, in August 2025, in every statement from every TBI official who has spoken publicly about this case, does not look like an investigation that has made peace with not finding Summer. It looks like an investigation that has a specific theory about what happened and is working to prove it. What that theory is, I don't know. The TBI has never publicly articulated a specific theory. Josh Melton, at the 3-year mark, specifically warned against speculation in a single direction, warned that investigators can't afford to lock onto one explanation and pursue it to the exclusion of others. He was speaking professionally. He was describing sound investigative methodology, but he was also speaking into a context where the online community had largely locked onto specific theories and specific names, and where that lock-on was, in his view, creating problems for the real investigation. He didn't say which theory was causing problems. He didn't say which direction was wrong. He said, speculating in a single direction is a mistake. What I take from that, and I want to be careful about this, because I'm speculating too, I'm aware of that, is that the TBI believes the answer is somewhere that the online community hasn't fully focused on, or hasn't focused on in the right way, that the noise has been pointing in a direction that's close but not quite right, or that's right in some ways and wrong in others. Van Hill Road is 9.8 miles from Ben Hill Road. That's the same cluster of letters in the road name. I don't know if that's meaningful, it's probably coincidence. But it's the kind of thing your brain does when you've been following a case for a long time. You notice the things that rhyme, the things that echo each other, and you have to decide whether they're significant or just the kind of pattern matching that human brains are inclined to do, even when there's no real pattern. I don't know if Van Hill Road and Ben Hill Road are connected in any way beyond their names. What I know is that investigators went to Van Hill Road in November 2025 and said nothing about what they found, and that Summer Wells is still missing, and that the TBI is still working. The tip line is 1-800-TBI-FIND. The email for tips is tips.bi@tbi.tn.gov. The reward is over $73,000. The Amber Alert is still active. If you were in the area around Van Hill Road in Greenville in November 2025 and you saw something, investigators or vehicles or any unusual activity, please contact the TBI. Not a streamer, not a community forum. The TBI directly. What you saw might be nothing. It might be exactly the context investigators need. If you were anywhere near Beach Creek on June 15th, 2021, and you have a detail, the smallest detail, as Director Rausch said on the 5-year anniversary, please make the call. The investigation is not over. The agents are still going to locations. The TBI is still working the leads, and whoever has information that matters, wherever they are, whatever they saw, whatever they know, the TBI believes that information is still out there to be found. November 13th, 2025, Van Hill Road, Greenville, Tennessee. 9.8 miles from where Summer lived. TBI agents were there. They said nothing about what they found, but they were there. TBI tip line, 1-800-TBI find email, tips@tbi@bitn.gov. Reward, over $73,000 Amber Alert, still active. Summer Wells, missing since June 15, 2021. She would be 10. Let me take a step back and think about what a field visit to a specific address actually requires, procedurally, because I think it matters for understanding what the November 2025 trip to Van Hill Road represents. TBI agents don't just decide on a Tuesday morning to go check out a random block somewhere because it seems interesting. Field visits, especially in an investigation of this scale, with this many agencies involved, with this much scrutiny on every action, are generated by something. A tip comes in. An interview produces a name or an address. A piece of evidence is re-examined and points toward a new location. A pattern in the data that somebody has been sitting with for months finally clicks into place. Something generated that visit. And that something was specific enough to send agents to the 3500 block specifically, not to Greenville in general, not to Greene County in general, but to that particular stretch of road. I think about that a lot, because the specificity of it is what makes it significant. If they had gone to a neighborhood, that would suggest a general geographic focus. If they had gone to a city, that would suggest something even broader, but they went to a block, a specific block, which means whatever pointed them there was precise. What was precise enough to send them to a specific block in November 2025? I don't know, and that's the answer I have to keep giving, honestly, for most of the specific questions this case generates. I don't know. Nobody outside the investigation knows. The TBI has been extraordinarily disciplined about what they release publicly, which, as I've said, I think reflects the fact that they have something worth protecting, not the fact that they have nothing. But here's something worth understanding about how the TBI has described the investigation publicly. Josh Melton, at the 3-year anniversary, talked about the ongoing work in a way that suggested multiple parallel tracks, not one theory being pursued to the exclusion of others, but multiple lines of inquiry being maintained simultaneously. Vehicle leads, witness interviews, physical evidence, tips still coming in. He mentioned vehicles specifically. That detail has stayed with me across all the coverage I've done of this case. He said investigators had been conducting interviews with people about vehicles that may have traveled through the area. Not one vehicle. Vehicles, plural. Not past tense, as in, we looked at that already. But an active, ongoing line of inquiry involving people being interviewed about vehicles. Vehicles move, they have routes, they pass through areas. They can be traced through traffic cameras, fuel purchases, toll records, the memories of people who saw them. A vehicle that was in the area of Ben Hill Road on June 15, 2021, might have been seen at other locations before or after that day. Might have been somewhere that, if you know where to look, produces a record. A vehicle lead that started on Ben Hill Road in June 2021 could end up pointing somewhere else by November 2025. After years of interviews and record requests and camera footage and everything else that investigators do when they're following something this carefully, could end up pointing toward a specific block in Greeneville. I'm speculating. I want to be clear about that. I'm laying out a possible explanation for something I don't have inside knowledge of. But I'm doing it because I think the way you understand what the TBI is doing matters for how you understand what might still be possible in this case. This is not a cold case. A cold case is one where the investigative trail has gone genuinely cold, where there are no active leads, no field visits, no personnel hours being dedicated to finding new information. This is not that. This is a case where TBI agents got in their cars in November 2025 and drove to a specific address. And the distinction matters because I think a lot of the community that follows this case has come to feel, understandably, after 5 years, like the investigation has essentially ended without anyone officially saying so. Like Summer is going to be one of those cases that never gets resolved. Like the TBI has done what it can and moved on to other things. The November 2025 field visit is evidence that that feeling is wrong. Let me talk about the 5-year anniversary and what the TBI said, because I think it adds important context to the field visit. Director David Rausch recorded and released a video on June 15, 2026, the 5th anniversary. He said the agency never imagined, his words, that Summer would still be missing on the 5th anniversary. That sentence is significant. It suggests the TBI at some point believed they would have resolved this by now, that there was a reasonable expectation based on what they knew and what they were pursuing, that the case would be closed within a shorter time frame. It hasn't been. Something has taken longer than expected. Something that seemed within reach has stayed out of reach. And yet, they're still going to Greenville. Rausch also said, the smallest detail remembered from that day could be helpful. He said, please come forward. He said the investigation has not stopped. These are not the words of someone announcing closure. These are the words of someone who is actively managing a still open investigation in a public-facing way, who is trying to keep the community's eyes and memory engaged, who is asking, on the 5th anniversary, with a recorded video, for the public to keep helping. There's something almost achingly hopeful about a TBI director recording a video on the 5th anniversary of a disappearance and saying, please, the smallest thing, please come forward. It's an admission that what they need might be sitting in someone's memory right now, might have been there since 2021, and that the person holding it hasn't yet understood it was important enough to share. The smallest detail. I think about what kinds of details get held for 5 years without the holder realizing they matter. A car parked in an unusual spot. Someone walking in a direction that seemed strange at the time. A conversation overheard that didn't make sense then. A face that didn't match the story someone told. These are the kinds of things that people file away as slightly odd and then move past, because in the moment they don't rise to the level of something you'd call a tip line about. But 4 years and 10 months after the fact, with agents still driving to Greenville and a TBI director recording anniversary videos, those tiny filed away details become potentially crucial. Because the investigation has been working for years to build a picture, and your one odd detail might be exactly the piece that completes a section of it. That's why Rausch said smallest detail, because by year 5, the major dramatic memories have been shared. The big sightings, the obvious tips, the things that felt clearly significant in the moment. What's left in people's memories, unfiled, is the small stuff. The things that seemed too minor to call about. The observations that felt like nothing. Those are exactly what investigators need at year 5. There's one more thing I want to say about the Van Hill Road visit before I close out. Something that I haven't seen discussed in any of the coverage I've read, and that I think deserves at least a moment of honest acknowledgement. The TBI said nothing about what they found. That silence is a choice. Law enforcement agencies make choices about what to disclose and when, and those choices are usually strategic. Disclosing nothing is a choice that can mean one of several things. They found nothing worth reporting. They found something but don't want to tip off anyone who might destroy evidence. They found something that is part of an ongoing investigation. They don't want to compromise. Or they found something that leads to further steps they need to take before they're ready to talk publicly. Any of those explanations is possible. 3 of the 4 involve having found something. I don't know which one it is. But I know that in an investigation where the TBI has been consistently disciplined about public disclosure, where they don't announce field visits proactively, where they only confirm this one when asked, choosing to say nothing about the outcome of a specific field visit fits the pattern of an agency that is protecting information that matters. If they had gone to Van Hill Road and found absolutely nothing, if it was a dead end, a tip that didn't pan out, an address that turned out to be irrelevant, the standard response would be to quietly move on, to not confirm the visit at all, or to confirm it and say it was part of routine follow-up and produced no new information. They confirmed the visit. They did not say it produced no new information. That's a specific choice, and I don't know what it means, but I notice it. November 13th, 2025, Van Hill Road, Greenville, Tennessee. 9.8 miles from 110 Ben Hill Road. TBI agents were there. They said nothing about what they found. The investigation continues. The Amber Alert is active. The reward is over $73,000. The TBI director recorded a video on the 5-year anniversary asking you to remember the smallest detail. If you have information about anything connected to Summer's disappearance, about what you may have seen in the Beach Creek area on June 15, 2021, about anything connected to the 3500 block of Van Hill Road in Greenville, please contact the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation directly. Not a forum, not a live stream. The TBI, 1-800-TBI-FIND. Tips to TBI tbitn.gov. Summer Wells, 10 years old. Missing since June 15, 2021. The agents are still going to the locations. Subscribe to Unsolved Archive for every verified development in this case. Hit the notification bell, because the investigation is not over, and somebody knows something.